Good morning, everyone. This is actually a presentation prepared by my colleague, Professor Carlos Poblete, who can unfortunately not be here today. He's in Mexico, so it's a little bit early for him to present online. So I'm going to try my best to relay the required information, and let's see how that goes. All right. So, okay, firstly, I'm also notoriously bad with these things, so let's see. All right. Oh, my donkey. Right. So, as some conceptual background, our mission as the Digital Agriculture Group, which we call ourselves at the department, is to contribute to optimizing agricultural processes and then also using innovative technologies and cutting-edge research in order to do that. So we aim at enhancing our agricultural productivity, sustainability, resilience, by leveraging advanced remote and proximal sensing technologies, and then also using modern data analysis techniques such as machine learning and artificial intelligence. So at the department, or at Stellenbosch University, we've got the South African Grape and Wine Research Institute, SAGRI, which is a level 2 institution which actually allows us to focus predominantly on our postgraduate training and also our grape and wine science research. But then the key factor with that institute is that it allows for multidisciplinarity, because we are able to accommodate researchers and students from other backgrounds within the institute. So that actually opens up to involve engineering students, etc., into some of these more technical projects. And then basically it also allows us to pursue internationalization and then also get involved in some of these new innovative research ideas. So it's a very nice platform to use and to have available for this type of research. So traditional agricultural practices we normally apply across the board. It's uniform management, so our kunstmest or fertilizer application, pruning strategies, etc. Regardless of whether there's an exact location or variability due to something in the soil or just something in terms of the block itself. But then we now starting to move closer to digital smart applications. I mean, in the past we've used NDVIs and things like that for separate harvest dates, etc. But we're taking this to a whole new level now. So a mouthful for the definition of digital agriculture, but it's basically using these new technologies, so various non-destructive technologies in the form of sensors and also different platforms and also the algorithms to then look at that spatial and temporal variability and incorporate that into management, optimizing the management practices in a nutshell. All right, so that's what we're kind of trying to focus on now. And if we're looking at adopting these strategies, there's 3 steps or processes involved in that. So firstly is to actually acquire the data. So that's using these non-invasive sensing technologies. We are also moving towards technologies with high resolutions and accuracy with lower costs, and also robotics and integrated sensor platforms where you can use one platform to then also measure multiple variables and using big data. The next step is then the data processing, so that's where the machine learning, artificial intelligence, neural networks, cloud computing, all of that comes into, and then to optimize this hardware and also use freely available software, so such as RStudio, Python, MATLAB, things like that. The last step, which is actually the most important, is then the implementation of these technologies. So being able to provide a map or a integrated information system that can optimize the practices, also then advance sustainability, and then using these delineated management practices according to differences in your orchard or your vineyard block, and then new applications such as the apps and web pages that make it very easy to adopt for producers on the ground. So I think the key thing is taking all of this information and these technologies and making it practically applicable for the producers. I think that is quite the important part, and it's also quite tricky. So if you're looking at the data acquisition, non-invasive sensing technologies, so mostly ones that we've worked with is RGB imaging, so that's normal photography using your cell phone, for instance. Obviously there's spectroscopy, which is usually in the visible and near-infrared range, giving us further spectral data. Multispectral imaging, which is a combination of spectral and imaging information, so you get both spatial data as well as spectral data. And then hyperspectral imaging, which is not fully utilized yet because it's actually quite complex and it's quite expensive as well. It's very difficult to also take this out to the field environment. We have done some trials with that, but that is quite tricky, so that's still something that we're dabbling with a bit. So my PhD, for instance, we're using it under lab conditions still. Chlorophyll fluorescence, infrared thermography or thermal imaging, that is a key one, especially in terms of use for this water stress detection. We've had quite good success with that in vineyards and also now in the study on apples that we'll look at later. Electrical sensitivity, conductivity, EM38 scans to give you soil properties and also soil water content information. And then I forgot to highlight that one, laser imaging and detection and ranging, so LiDAR. So we often use that to also determine canopy volume by 3D reconstructing the canopy from a point cloud. So the highlighted ones are the ones that we've done some research on already, but yeah, watch this space. We're constantly thinking up new ideas. So if we're looking at the sensing platforms, we've got remote sensing or space-based platforms. So that would be like the Landsat and Sentinel-2, etc. That Prof. van Niekerk has also mentioned. Air-based platforms, previously that was aircraft, but we're now moving through to drones and UAVs. And then also our ground-based platform. So these sensors can essentially also be mounted onto tractors, ATVs, harvesters, any farm implement, which makes it quite useful. But then also the robotic platforms, so where we can incorporate various different sensors onto one robot platform. And then these are also show great potential, and there's quite a few of them becoming available. So the Winbot, Vine Scout, our own Dassie robot, which will make an appearance on one of the slides just now, right there. So basically, if you're saying the satellites, UAVs, the Televitis in number C is in figure C is the Televitis mobile lab, and then also our Dassie robot in figure D, right? So doing his work there in the vineyards. Yeah, so the next two slides overlap a little bit with the previous presentation, but just looking at the complexity of artificial intelligence. So deep learning, machine learning, natural language processing, you all know GPT. Yeah. So those things all are considered to be artificial intelligence, but those overlap with statistics, mathematics, computer science, and data mining. And then most importantly also like the domain knowledge, which would be your horticultural knowledge or viticultural knowledge, whatever domain you're applying this to. So it's quite it's a multidisciplinary, multifaceted type of technology, and that's what also makes it quite complex. This one you've seen just previously, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but the idea is that we are now trying to train a model, in our case, where we are looking at perhaps fruit quality from imaging or spectroscopy. You're giving it the answer, you are putting in the image or the spectra, and you're trying to get the model, all right, or the program, the rules. Okay, so I think Prof. van Niekerk did a very good job of explaining this previously. So now we're moving a little bit to the application process. So we've tried 5 different approaches. We looked at fruit quality, canopy assessment, pest and disease and monitoring, yield estimation, and then also the one that we're focusing a little bit more on later is the water requirement and stress monitoring, which was done specifically in apple orchards. So in terms of fruit quality, we've used spectroscopy on a whole bunch. So we've tried to do that under laboratory conditions. But we're also then using different, apart from just the normal PLS or partial least squares regression model, we also tried artificial neural networks, which are a little bit more complex, to see, and also in combinations of various what we call pre-processing steps. So in terms of a model, you have pre-processing steps and the modeling, what would you call it, the equation. It's very mathematical, but basically there's various combinations of those that you can use in order to come to or achieve the best model in the end. So it's a bit of a rabbit hole in the applying this and trying to figure out what is the best model that you can develop for a specific variable that you're looking at. So we actually found very good results with the artificial neural networks, which are a little bit more complex, and found like a reduced root square mean error, so it's more accurate. So there's various applications available for this, and a lot of work that can still be done in order to streamline and perfect these models. We're also looking at non-destructive approaches. So in my PhD, for instance, we're looking at multispectral imaging in the field and relating that to hyperspectral imaging, which is done under the laboratory condition. So the idea is, it's a project that we're running in combination with SARTI about the physical and chemical bunch characterization of table grapes using machine learning. So this is also one of those supervised machine learning, where you're training the model to see what we can get from that. Of course, in the field, it's quite difficult in terms of the impact that light conditions has on multispectral imaging, so that's quite a challenge. So that's something that we also have to overcome. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of, no, raak my Engels op. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for these different qualities or technologies. A very good next application that we used is for canopy assessment. So when we're doing satellite imaging or drone imaging, there's a problem with cover crops and soil that can interfere or interact with your imaging. So in terms of being able to extrapolate that and classify your image into what is actually plant and what is actually soil and shadow. So using different classification methods, as mentioned, k-means, random forests, etc., artificial neural networks, those are popping up a lot these days. We managed to actually classify those images into soil and shadow classes, and then also into the plant classes, to be able to accurately work with only the vine data in this case. Furthermore, I mentioned using LiDAR, so making a mesh surface area to then 3D reconstruct, for instance, a vine to get the canopy volume, or we can also look at canopy temperature, use multispectral imaging, etc., to be able to then classify that canopy size and various other parameters within the canopies. We also then are able, if you've got GPS-enabled monitoring systems, or being able to tag a GPS coordinate to your measurements, you can then make a canopy volume map, example of that, and then that can also be used by producers to see where the variability in terms of vigor lies in their block, and perhaps have demarcated management zones, etc. So that's Dusty going for a spin there outside the building. So yeah, it's quite a nifty little robot, but yeah, we need to start him up again for the next season. So let's watch this space. Furthermore, there was an app that was developed, I think it's still available, where we actually use what they call background or cover photography. So using a background to be able to extract just the vine parameters, so in this case, like the leaves, the canopy, and basically by taking a photo upwards, using the sky as a background. What we usually do in research is also by using like a white panel, but that's a little bit more tricky. And also we've realized that it also depends on your trellising system, etc., how easily applicable that technology is. So basically by using these images, there's a model that runs in the background, and it can extract the number of the volume of your canopy. So basically that's how that technology works. We also tried it in an apple orchard. So of course, an apple tree is much larger than a vine. So they actually had to take these photos in quadrants from underneath. And they actually found very good correlation between, at the graph on the right-hand side, between the lateral area index that was measured or calculated and the lateral area index that they actually measured by destructing the leaves from the tree. I'm sure the producer was, yeah, a bit nervous about that one, but yeah, we need to ground truth these things. So luckily we had someone who was willing to let us do that. And by allowing us to do that, we managed to find out that, okay, there is a good correlation, this is a good this is a good model that can predict that. Also, a side note, if anyone is interested in any of the articles that are mentioned in this presentation, you're welcome to contact us, and we can make that available. It's not a problem at all. So another application we tested it for was pest and disease and monitoring, so using thermal imaging to basically isolate Venturia inequalis, I just know it as apple scab, to actually use thermal imaging to find or infrared imaging to find spots on infected leaves. And also another application was to use RGB to be able to identify downy mildew symptoms on grapevine leaves. Quite a big project that we had running with SAGA, the South African Avocado Growers Association, was to determine the severity of Phytophthora root rot infestation in an avocado orchard. So using various proximal and remote sensing technologies, all the way from satellite to UAVs, drones, also just handheld thermal cameras, normal RGB cameras, etc., etc. And then they tested those various technologies in their applicability for determining the degree of infection of the trees. Obviously, it was also ground truth by using the Ciba-Geigy scale, so that is a lot of footwork. So I think, I will get to it just now, but I just want to also reiterate what Prof. Nickert said, is that 60% of the work is to do the ground truthing and doing like the training of the model. If you don't do that correctly, then the model is not going to work in various applications. Yield estimation is a new one, or we have done it, but we're also re-looking at some new projects for that, in using 3D reconstructive technologies, and also being able to identify the various bunches using artificial intelligence. So that's something that's also very important for, especially grape growers, but also in apples, pears, etc. So, so we're basically looking at using the You Only Look Once, the YOLO model, which is to basically, once again, a supervised training where an expert will take the photo and label it, so those blue bounding boxes in the second line of the images, and then basically we'll see what the artificial intelligence comes up with. So it might miss one or two, so that tiny little bunch that was occluded there by the leaves on the right-hand side was missed, but the more you do it, the better the model gets at it. So we often get the question of, but will it work for white grapes or maybe green apples or whatever that looks very similar to the leaves? Remember, we don't know what the neural processes are for us identifying a bunch. We don't just look at the color, we look at, our brain looks at maybe 10 different aspects. Now, the nice thing about artificial intelligence, there is no limit as to how many aspects that computer can use to make a decision, so it doesn't get mental fatigue. So the aspect of color, that's not the only thing that goes about in terms of identifying the bunches. So it works just as well in white grapes as it does in red grapes as well. Can be done. Right, so getting to the nice one about apples, actually, finally, is the water requirement and stress monitoring that we did. So this was part of Karen Kluwer's MSc project. So firstly, we did a study a few years ago estimating evapotranspiration in apple orchards from crop coefficients and the Penman teeth using satellite images. So that could also be used to draw a map of that orchard in terms of water stress. So that was found to be quite, quite successful. But we're also looking at, okay, we haven't gotten to Karen's one yet, but then also looking at the evapotranspiration measured with like the eddy covariance systems, etc. Those systems are very expensive. So we're also looking at, once again, more cost-efficient technologies to not replace, but to, what is the Afrikaanse woord nou wat ek wil soek? Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. Don't you? Oh no. 'n Goeie begrip en 'n halwe woord nodig. All right, so to complement, there we go. That's the word I was looking for. Right, so in this graph, you actually see the measured or the modeled ET value, which is the black dots and the black lines, was very closely related to actual measured ET values, which are the blue dots. Obviously, it was only measured for a certain period of the season. There's no point in measuring it during the winter periods. So that was measured through the growing season. Furthermore, also using thermal imaging for this process. So once again, eddy covariance, but then also using a thermal imaging in terms of what the stem water potential of the crop is. So, and then being able to draw a map from that to actually look at. And you can see canopy temperature and the predicted stem water potential. Those two maps are very similar in terms of how they are classified, so that's also a very nice correlation there. We also did a study with one of our engineering students looking at water crop on grapevines, so looking for reference temperatures and using thermal imaging to be able to predict stem water potential or level of water stress. And that was actually, so they built a model where it actually, it's like a feedback loop, where there's various interrogation along the process, and as they go along, if there's, is there a difference in the threshold? If there's no difference, that will actually, reiterate that process with a different portion of difference, and then if there was, it will actually stop the process, and then ends, and you have your answer. So there was a lot of modelling involved in that study as well. So we know now we are close to Karen's project. So we know that if a plant experiences water stress, whether it's an apple or a grapevine, water stress will lead to stomatal closure, which will then lead to increasing leaf temperature. So that's where the whole theory behind using thermal imaging to detect water stress comes from. So yes, this is now finally her project, where we did field experiments over 2 seasons. So, and we used various reference measures. So that was stem water potential, stomatal conductance, soil moisture, and then normal soil analysis. And then we used RGB and thermal imaging from a drone platform. We had quite a few technical issues in terms of overlaying the thermal camera onto RGB camera. So we had to overcome that as well. It's not always as simple as just taking the image. But then she developed a pipeline for working with this thermal data to make those adjustments to these images to be able to get it into a workable format. And she also managed to find a new way of calculating the crop water stress index by using different references. So you can see using water for like a 0 value, using the soil for a value of 1, which is almost maximum, and then various, if you use cardboard, she used like a reflective foil blanket, green cover, etc., to also try and optimize that process of actually doing those calculations. So if we're looking at this graph, basically we saw a very nice difference in the between the treatment of the well-watered and the water deficit. Here we go, that's what WD stands for. It's not WD-40. Anyway, so basically you've got the crop water stress index. You can see clearly a difference between, especially there where there's a significant difference between the 2 treatments, where there's a change in temperature of 0.7 degrees versus a change in temperature of 3.4 degrees. So you can see there's quite a difference. So it was a very nice correlation between your leaf temperature and how much stress your plant is actually experiencing. So to end off, basically what our future perspectives are is to support current traditional agricultural practices with our latest technologies and data capturing and also that data analysis processes to improve the performance of the crops. So that's why we call ourselves Digital Agriculture Group. Even though we're housed within the Viticulture and Oenology Department, as you can see, we've worked on apples and avoes, and we're open to working on any other crops as well, because these things are interlinkable. Okay, so there will be additional ground truthing involved, but the principles behind these technologies can be applied to any crop, essentially. Right, so also looking at improving that quality, the productive capacity of the agricultural sector as a whole. Our new concepts and ideas, so that's like our smart applications that can be implemented to optimize management practices and also solve some technical problems. But then also, especially this part is where the AI mechanistic models are needing to be trained and calibrated and tested properly before being released for application or practical use. I think that is one of our key mandates and an area where we can really make a difference. So that's something that we can really assist with and something that we are putting our focus on at the moment. Then also the collection, digitization, storage and visualization, management of all the historical data that can also be fed into these models. So we're looking at projects where, for yield estimations, etc., can we take historical information and marry that with new on-the-ground data that we capture to build an even better model by looking at incorporating the historical data as well. And then in order to then produce these models that can help producers to make certain decisions, all right. And then collaborating among growers, service providers and research institutions. We need to work together in order to accelerate the implementation and adoption of these technologies. So I think that's also another leg or tooth of this fork that we want to really put our efforts and our energy into. Bringing people around the table, being able to work together and to solve the common problem of how do we build proper models that are well tested and well trained. So that is my story, and I've still got a minute and 13 seconds left.